I want to talk to you a bit today about Roy Cohn and about Michael Cohen and about Bill Barr. Both of these, all of the three of these are attorneys. Roy Cohn, of course, was Trump's first attorney and fixer. And I would go ahead now. And in terms of the secular ways of explaining the legal profession, he was not a Clarence Darrow or Johnny Cochran in that matter, and then he was a great litigator in court, a great trial attorney. But I'll have to say of Roy Cohn, who you probably have heard discussions about. You've heard about him that he was a fixer for Tribulation Trump. And by the way, he ultimately died of AIDS. But we'll get to that. Praise the Lord. But he was, in a secular sense, he was a genius. He was Jewish, and a Jewish lawyer, and I think really set the legal profession on its heels in terms of his ability to use the law in ways that was extremely effective. And it was Roy Cohn that brought Tribulation Trump out of the doldrums of just somebody who had inherited $1 billion from his father and was now running a real estate industry, but he was somebody from Queens. Nobody really knew Trump until Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn, who had been very popular with governors and mayors like Abe Beame and many New York politicians, was able to then and later became very powerful with the infamous Senator Joe McCarthy, who led if you will, the Communist Inquisition of the 1950s. But Roy Cohn actually made Trump. He actually brought him up, introduced him to the New York, powerful and the rich. And then after that, worked with Trump on a large number of matters, probably the most infamous of which when the federal government housing sued Trump and his father for housing discrimination. Roy Cohn took the case, and Roy Cohn turned around and sued the federal government for $100 million of accusing Trump and his father of discrimination, and the matter was settled. Trump settled to pay a certain amount of money, but never admitted any kind of wrongdoings. And one of the things that you'll see now in the lifestyle of Trump of never admitting anything, always suing, is he was taught that by Roy Cohn. And I can't express to you, if you don't know Roy Cohn, if you don't remember, and he's not been around in some time since he died of AIDS, and you just heard his name, I can't begin to express to you, the kind of genius he was, and in terms of the legal profession. And much of what you see going on right now, Trump has learned from Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was also a cocaine addict. He snorted more cocaine than Richard Pryor. I mean, he just did. He was big on cocaine. And the other thing about Roy Cohn is that he was gay. And he kept that private. He kept that secret, except for the people he wanted to know that he was gay. But he was very, very, very gay and deeply addicted to cocaine. And ultimately, he contracted the virus called AIDS. And it took him out of it. And I think the thing that disappointed Roy Cohn, as he died, and Mr. Engineer, you can bring up the picture of him with Joe McCarthy when he was sat beside Joe McCarthy during this Communist Inquisition. He actually counseled McCarthy into many of the things, illegal maneuvers that he made. He sat beside him. And it was everybody knows about Senator Joe McCarthy, but very few people know about the power behind the throne, which is Roy Cohn in his younger days. And he went on from there to some very powerful political things. And he was also the lawyer for Studio 54, which ran into a lot of controversial claims, a lot of drug dealing going on, a lot of sex going on in Studio 54. I don't know if you remember the years of Studio 54, if you've been around New York for that period. It was the hottest spot in town. It was hotter than the Copacabana. This was one joint of a disco place. And Roy Cohn, of course, had the key. And he ran the joint and kept them out of trouble because there was a lot of drug use going on in there, a lot of high society people going in there dancing, getting high. You know, they had on the first floor, they had the dance floor, then they had 7 floors above that, sex, group sex, all kind of orgies going on. It was an awesome place in that regard, the devil's place. And Roy Cohn pretty much helped those 2 young men that set up Studio 54. But he himself contracted the AIDS virus and he died. And when he died, it is alleged that he was very brokenhearted because Trump dumped him when Trump found out he had AIDS. Now, Trump knew he was a cocaine addict. Trump knew he was gay. But Trump did not want to be, and it was him that introduced Trump to the world. Without Roy Cohn, there'd be no Donald Trump. There would not be. And so I think it's important for those who are looking at this period of time to understand the mindset of Trump. You won't understand him unless you look carefully at Roy Cohn. You know, his niece wrote a book, and it was one of the bestsellers, sold nearly 1 million copies the first day. Talked about Trump, but quite frankly, I mean, I listened to it. I listened to Rachel Maddow interview. I listened to Chris Cuomo interview her. I listened to several other people interview Mary Trump. And I wasn't impressed. I mean, I thought she said some things that a family member would know. But if you really want to know how Trump thinks, and who, you need to read about Roy Cohn, if you can find literature about him. Now, so Trump loses Roy Cohn. Guess who he picks up? Another Cohen, name spelled a little bit different with an E this time. Michael Cohen, right? Michael Cohen, Jewish also, similar looking to Roy Cohn, but not a homosexual. And Michael Cohen practiced law, and the only thing Michael Cohen ever did for Trump was sue people and use all kind of, you know, legal techniques to fight, because Trump never paid anybody, and Roy Cohen never paid anybody either. Roy Cohen never had a credit card nor a checking account because he was never accessible. People could never sue him, though he moved money around like, you know, Nadine in her Cadillac at the top of the hill with Chuck Berry in his V8 Ford. But now after Michael Cohen dies, after Roy Cohen dies, Trump picks up Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen becomes the inserted for Roy Cohen. And of course, you're very much aware of Michael Cohen. He served Trump for 10 years. And a fixer. You know, just fixing Trump, and was convicted of fixing a payment of $130,000 that Trump made to Stormy Daniels, and Michael Cohen wrote it out of his checkbook, and then Trump reimbursed them as legal fees, and so that's where the whole thing got Michael Cohen convicted. But I think the problem with that was that with Michael Cohen and Tribulation Trump, he dumped Michael Cohen. I've met Michael Cohen on one occasion. We've talked numerous times on the phone. By the way, you know, he's a very conscientious person. He's up early in the morning, Michael Cohen. He starts calling you at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking at 6 o'clock in the morning. Who's on the phone? On my phone, Michael Cohen. We were discussing several things in the early days when I was supporting Trump. Y'all remember those days. But the thing of it is that Trump did not take Michael Cohen down to Washington with him. When he got elected, he appointed a whole lot of other people into, you know, prestigious positions. But he left Michael Cohen here in New York. Some say that soured Michael Cohen against Trump and thus started the problems between the two of them. But Michael Cohen was a good fixer. And I took that picture you saw there. That happened down at Trump Tower going back a few years ago. I was talking with Michael Cohen about giving advice to Trump about what not to do about Black Lives Matter. If you put that up again, Mr. Engineer, this discussion I held with Michael Cohen, I was explaining to him because there were a number of preachers in the room that was telling Trump to apologize to Black Lives Matter for something he said. I forgot what he said about him. And I called Michael Cohen over to the side and I told him, whatever you do, tell Trump don't apologize to Black Lives Matter. And I was working with Michael Cohen on bringing Trump to Harlem, but Trump didn't want to come. And Michael Cohen had to finally tell me, Trump don't want to go to Harlem. He won't be bothered with people in Harlem. Eventually, I got off the Trump train, as you very well know. Michael Cohen was convicted, sent to prison, Otisville. and was released, and then went for a parole hearing the other day, and they rearrested him because Michael Cohen is also writing a tell-all book about Trump. And they told him, if you continue to write that book, you're gonna lose your liberty to be at home, serving your sentence at home. At any rate, those two men, I think, are very important for you to understand who Tribulation Trump is and what he's all about in terms of his Jewish lawyers. And I don't say Jewish in a pejorative way. I mean, I got all my lawyers are Jewish, except for the ones we're raising up here that are Hamites in our church, that are students in school. Finally, so talking about lawyers, Bill Barr, strangely enough, is also an attorney, is served as the Attorney General assistant under the Bush administration. He ain't been around for a while, Bill Barr. He's no young, whippersnapper. Trump called him in as Attorney General after he'd gotten rid of, after he couldn't get the senator from Alabama to do the kind of, things that Trump wanted done, that Roy Cohn did and that Michael Cohen did. Now, actually, if you want to understand what Bill Barr is doing and why he's reacting to Trump as he's reacting to him, Bill Barr. But if you go back and look at Roy Cohn and look at Michael Cohen, and now you'll see Bill Barr, who has a utopian, if you will, a dystopian, if you must, ideal about the presidency, that the presidency should have absolute power. He should not be hindered by anything. Whatever he wants to do, he should be able to do it. While there are three branches of the government, the congressional branch and the judicial branch and the executive branch, but Bill Barr actually believes in his heart that a president should not have to, share his power with the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court, or with the Congress, which is the House of Representatives and Senate. And that's where we find ourselves now. But the history of Trump, I think, is better understood. I think you better understand the man if you understand Roy Cohn, the man that actually promoted him to be the man that he is. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.